Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie Killing Me Softly, 2002, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. Some movies grab you from the very first moment, pulling you into a world where passion collides with danger, where love is intoxicating but always edged with something sinister. Killing Me Softly is one of those films. A psychological thriller wrapped in seduction, the film takes the viewer on a journey that is both exhilarating and unsettling. From the moment the protagonist makes a seemingly impulsive decision to abandon everything she knows for the sake of a man who feels like fate, the audience is dragged into a world where obsession and paranoia blur into one. Based on the novel by Nicci French, Killing Me Softly is a film that thrives on the allure of the unknown. The story follows Alice, an American woman living in London, played by Heather Graham. Alice is independent, successful, and seemingly content in her stable life, until the day she crosses paths with Adam Tallis. Adam, played by Joseph Fiennes, is not just a man. He is an enigma, a storm of intensity wrapped in the charm of a world-renowned mountaineer. From the first moment their eyes meet, Alice is swept up in something she can't quite understand, something beyond logic or reason. Their passion is instant and all-consuming. In the span of mere hours, Alice abandons her current life, her boyfriend, and everything she once considered stable. She plunges headfirst into an affair so intense it feels like destiny. Adam is magnetic, his presence almost hypnotic, and Alice finds herself drawn deeper and deeper into his world. She marries him in a whirlwind of passion, convinced that she has found the kind of love that only exists in novels and dreams. But as quickly as the passion ignites, a shadow falls over their relationship. There is something about Adam that doesn't quite add up. He is loving, yet unpredictable, tender, yet prone to moments of eerie silence. As Alice settles into her new life as his wife, small unsettling details begin to surface. There are secrets in Adam's past that he refuses to talk about, and whispers of women who came before her, women who vanished. At first, Alice dismisses her fears, convincing herself that she is just overthinking, that love this intense is bound to feel a little dangerous. But then the warnings start. A mysterious package arrives at their home, a photo of Adam with a woman Alice has never seen before. A stranger approaches her on the street, murmuring cryptic messages that suggest she is in danger. The deeper Alice digs, the more she realizes that she may not know the man she married at all. The tension in Killing Me Softly builds like a slow-burning fuse. Every interaction between Alice and Adam is laced with uncertainty, their passion interwoven with an unspoken fear. The chemistry between Heather Graham and Joseph Fiennes is undeniable, making every scene between them crackle with intensity. But just beneath that chemistry lies a question that keeps the viewer hooked. Is Adam dangerous, or is Alice losing her grip on reality? The film plays with the classic elements of psychological thrillers, obsession, paranoia, and the intoxicating danger of love that burns too hot. As Alice tries to piece together the truth, the film keeps the audience in suspense, never fully revealing whether Adam is a loving husband with a tragic past or a predator weaving a deadly web. Every moment is a guessing game, every clue pulling the audience deeper into the mystery. And then comes the turning point, the moment Alice realizes that the truth is far darker than she ever imagined. The realization hits like a shockwave, and from that moment on, Killing Me Softly transforms from a slow-burning thriller into a desperate race for survival. With its gripping tension, seductive atmosphere, and a climax that will leave you breathless, this is a film that refuses to let go until the very last second. But what is the real truth behind Adam's past? What happened to the women before Alice? And will she be able to escape the seductive but deadly trap she has walked into? That, my friends, is something you'll have to discover for yourself. Killing Me Softly is a thriller that thrives on uncertainty, on the delicate balance between love and danger. It is a reminder that sometimes the most intoxicating love stories can also be the most terrifying. Alice leads an ordinary, comfortable life in London. She has a steady job, a kind boyfriend, and a routine that makes sense. Everything about her world is predictable, stable, and safe. And then, in an instant, it all changes. It begins with a single glance, a moment so intense that it sears itself into her mind. She is walking down the street when she sees him. A stranger, yet somehow familiar, standing across the road. His eyes lock onto hers with an intensity that feels almost magnetic. Alice should keep walking. She should ignore the way her heart pounds in her chest, the way time seems to slow. But she doesn't. The moment lingers, stretching between them like an invisible thread, until finally, he moves. He crosses the street, walking toward her with purpose, and suddenly, Alice is caught in a whirlwind she never expected. The stranger is Adam Tallis, a world-renowned mountaineer, a man who has scaled the deadliest peaks on Earth and lived to tell the tale. He is raw, intense, and intoxicating in a way that makes Alice's world tilt on its axis. Their attraction is instant, undeniable, and overwhelming. Adam does not hesitate. He does not wait. He takes her by the hand, leads her to his apartment, and within moments they are tangled together in a passion so fierce it feels like destiny itself. Everything about Adam is urgent, consuming, as if he is afraid that if he lets go, she will disappear. And Alice, caught between desire and disbelief, allows herself to fall. Hours later, as she lays tangled in his sheets, reality tries to catch up with her. She has a boyfriend, a life, a sense of control that she has just recklessly abandoned. But when she looks at Adam, at the way he watches her as if she is the only thing in the world that matters, she knows there is no going back. In a matter of days, Alice makes a decision that shocks even herself. She leaves her old life behind. Her boyfriend, her carefully constructed existence, it all becomes irrelevant in the face of what she feels with Adam. She barely knows him, yet she marries him, throwing herself completely into a love that feels like it was written in the stars. At first, their life together is intoxicating. Every touch, every whisper, every stolen glance is filled with electricity. Adam is unlike anyone she has ever known, adventurous, fearless, larger than life. He speaks of the mountains he has conquered, the dangers he has faced, and Alice drinks in every word, unable to resist the allure of a man who seems to defy the limits of the ordinary world. But as the days pass, the thrill of passion begins to shift into something else. Something unsettling. It starts with small things. Adam refuses to talk about his past. When Alice asks about his family, his childhood, or even past relationships, he deflects, offering vague answers before changing the subject. At first, she tells herself it doesn't matter. Everyone has things they don't want to talk about. But the unease settles into her bones, growing heavier with each passing day. It starts with small things. Adam refuses to talk about his past. When Alice asks about his family, his childhood, or even past relationships, he deflects, offering vague answers before changing the subject. At first, she tells herself it doesn't matter. Everyone has things they don't want to talk about. But the unease settles into her bones, growing heavier with each passing day. And then the warnings begin. A package arrives at their doorstep, addressed to Alice. Inside is a photograph, Adam, standing beside a woman Alice has never seen before. There is no note, no explanation, just the image of her husband with a stranger. When she confronts him, Adam's reaction is swift and cold. He dismisses it, claiming it's nothing, accusing her of being paranoid. His words are convincing, his touch reassuring, but something inside Alice refuses to quiet. Then, a stranger stops her in the street. A woman she does not know, with eyes filled with urgency. "You're not safe," she whispers. "You need to get away from him." Alice's world tilts again. She looks around, trying to understand, but before she can ask anything, the woman is gone, swallowed by the crowded streets of London. When she tells Adam what happened, his reaction is immediate and unsettling. He laughs it off at first, but beneath his easy charm, there is something darker. People get jealous, he says. They don't like seeing others happy. His voice is soothing, but his grip on her arm is just a little too tight. Alice tries to brush it off, tries to tell herself that she is imagining things. But the unease won't let her go. She begins to dig. She searches through Adam's belongings, looking for answers she is afraid to find. And that is when she discovers something she cannot ignore. A collection of letters, hidden away in a drawer. Letters from different women. Women whose names she does not recognize. Women who speak of love, of promises, of a future that never came. A cold realization washes over her. She is not the first. And then the real fear sets in. What happened to the others? Where did they go? Alice is trapped in a house filled with secrets, married to a man she no longer knows. The love that once felt like fate now feels like a trap, and as the shadows around her grow darker, one question echoes in her mind. Did she just marry a killer? Alice's world is no longer the intoxicating whirlwind of love and passion it once was. The man she married, the man she abandoned everything for, now feels like a stranger. The warm, reassuring arms that once made her feel safe now feel like a cage. And worst of all, she is starting to believe that she is not the first woman to feel this way in Adam's presence. The discovery of the letters lingers in her mind, each one an unspoken warning. The women who wrote them spoke of love, devotion, and promises. But their words are frozen in time, with no sign of the women themselves. Where did they go? Why did they disappear from Adam's life so completely? Alice tries to confront him, carefully choosing her words, hoping to mask her growing fear. But Adam's responses are always the same: calm, composed, and completely dismissive. He tells her she is being paranoid. That love like theirs invites jealousy. That people will do anything to ruin something as perfect as what they have. Alice wants to believe him. But she can't. The tension builds, thickening the air between them. She watches him more closely now, taking note of the smallest details, the way he moves, the way his gaze lingers on her when he thinks she isn't looking. She starts to see things she hadn't noticed before. He is unpredictable, his moods shifting like the weather. One moment, he is affectionate, whispering words of devotion into her ear, making her feel like the center of the universe. The next, he is distant, cold, almost unreadable. It is as if there are two versions of Adam, one that she fell in love with, and one that she never really knew at all. One night, when Adam is asleep, Alice searches further. She moves through the house as quietly as she can, opening drawers, looking for something, anything, that might confirm her suspicions. And then she finds it. A box, carefully hidden away. Inside, she finds photographs. Faces of women she has never seen, their smiles frozen in time. But what sends a chill down her spine is that each woman is wearing something of hers. A scarf. A necklace. A dress. The realization hits her like a punch to the gut. These women were here, in this house, with Adam. And now they are gone. Fear grips her like a vice. She knows she can't ignore it any longer. She needs answers. She seeks out the stranger who had warned her in the street, following the faint traces of a name she remembers overhearing. When she finally finds the woman, the truth she learns is worse than she imagined. Adam was engaged before. The woman he was meant to marry disappeared, vanished without a trace. No body was found. No signs of struggle. Just a life erased, as if she had never existed at all. And before her? Another woman. Different circumstances, the same eerie ending. And now Alice is beginning to see the pattern. She rushes home, heart pounding in her chest, trying to suppress the sheer panic rising inside her. She knows she can't let Adam suspect anything. Not yet. But she is too late. Adam is waiting for her. His expression is unreadable, his posture too still, too composed. "Where were you?" he asks, his voice calm, but laced with something darker beneath the surface. Alice forces a smile, murmuring an excuse about errands, but Adam steps closer. "You've been different lately," he says, tilting his head slightly, watching her like a predator assessing prey. "Is something wrong?" She shakes her head, forcing herself to stay calm. But Adam doesn't believe her. That night, Alice barely sleeps. She keeps her eyes open, her body tense, every sound making her flinch. She needs to get out. She needs to leave. But she knows she can't just walk away, not when Adam controls everything. The house. The accounts. The locks. The next morning, she feigns normalcy. She smiles, she kisses him, she plays the role of the devoted wife. And then, when he is distracted, she runs. She moves quickly, her breath sharp in her throat as she rushes through the streets. She reaches out to the authorities, desperate to tell them everything she has discovered. But the response is infuriating. There is no concrete evidence. No reports. No records that tie Adam to any crimes. Without proof, it is just her word against his. And Adam is respected, admired. He is the hero, the adventurer, the man who has saved lives on the mountains. And so, she is left alone with the truth. Alice knows she has one option left. She has to find the missing pieces herself. She retraces Adam's past, tracking down people who knew him before. The stories are always similar. Charming, intense, unpredictable. But the deeper she digs, the darker the patterns become. Adam has always been drawn to women like her. Women who fall fast, who trust too easily. And each time they disappear. Then, Alice finds something that makes her blood run cold. A name she recognizes. A woman who was presumed dead. But the details don't add up. The body was never found. And yet, she was declared deceased under suspicious circumstances. Alice realizes that Adam may not just be dangerous. He may be something far worse. She doesn't know how, but Adam finds her before she can act. She turns to see him standing there, his eyes fixed on her. She turns to see him standing there, his eyes fixed on her. And for the first time, he doesn't pretend. There is no charm, no warmth. Just silence. "You've been busy," he says, his voice quiet. Alice's heart pounds. She forces herself to stay still, to appear unshaken. But she knows, this is it. This is the moment where everything unravels. Adam steps closer, his expression unreadable. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this," he says, almost regretfully. Alice moves before she can think, lunging past him, running. She doesn't know where she is going, only that she has to escape. She hears his footsteps behind her, calm, measured. He isn't panicking. He isn't chasing her in a frenzy. He knows he doesn't have to. But Alice refuses to let this be the end. The final confrontation is brutal, desperate, a struggle between love and survival. The man who once made her feel alive is now the reason she is fighting to stay that way. In a single moment, a choice is made, a line is crossed, and Alice finally sees Adam for what he is. The truth is out. And when the dust settles, when the fear has passed, Alice steps back into the world, forever changed. But as she walks away, she knows one thing for certain. Some love stories are never meant to last. Alice begins as a woman who is sure of her place in the world. She has a stable life in London, a steady relationship, and a sense of control over her future. But the moment she locks eyes with Adam, everything changes. The woman who once valued logic and stability suddenly finds herself throwing caution to the wind, diving headfirst into an affair so intense that it overrides everything she thought she knew about herself. Alice is not just in love, she is possessed by it, consumed by a force that feels larger than life. What makes Alice's character so compelling is that she is both a romantic and a skeptic. She is drawn to the fantasy of a love that feels like fate, yet she cannot ignore the unsettling whispers at the edge of her mind. She is smart, intuitive, and deeply aware, but she also craves passion in a way that makes her vulnerable. As she moves deeper into Adam's world, she begins to change. At first, she is dazzled by his charm, by the way he seems to pull her into something more intense than she has ever experienced. But as her doubts creep in, she becomes someone else entirely, a woman fighting to reconcile the love she feels with the fear that begins to take root. Heather Graham's performance as Alice is both delicate and powerful. She brings an innocence to the role that makes Alice's transformation all the more heartbreaking. In the beginning, there is a softness to her, a sense of wonder in the way she looks at Adam. But as the story unfolds, that wonder turns into something darker. She starts to move differently, to speak more carefully, as if every word she says could shift the ground beneath her feet. She is a woman caught between two realities, the love story she wants to believe in and the nightmare that may be waiting for her just beneath the surface. And then there is Adam. Adam Tallis is the kind of man who commands attention without ever raising his voice. He is not just attractive. He is magnetic, the kind of person who walks into a room and makes everyone else fade into the background. He is a world-renowned mountaineer, a man who has faced death and survived, who has stories of frozen peaks and near-fatal falls. His presence is intoxicating, his confidence unwavering. From the moment Alice meets him, he is in control. But Adam is more than just charm and adventure. There is something else beneath the surface, something that lingers in his silences, in the way he evades questions about his past. At first, he appears to be the perfect lover, passionate, devoted, completely consumed by Alice. But as the story unfolds, small cracks begin to form in that perfect exterior. His intensity shifts from romantic to suffocating. His protectiveness starts to feel like control. He loves Alice, but his love does not set her free. It binds her, tightens around her like a trap. Joseph Fiennes plays Adam with a subtle menace that makes him impossible to look away from. He never plays him as an outright villain. Instead, Adam is a man who exists in the space between devotion and danger. One moment, he is the ideal husband, whispering sweet words into Alice's ear. The next, he is unreadable, his gaze too heavy, his voice too measured. He is unpredictable in a way that keeps the audience on edge, making them wonder, is he dangerous, or is he just deeply wounded? What makes Adam so terrifying is that he never appears to be a monster. He does not shout, he does not rage. Instead, his darkness seeps in quietly, in the way he watches Alice, in the way his hand lingers on her wrist just a second too long. He is a man who knows how to make a woman feel like she is the center of his universe, even as he erases every trace of the women who came before her. And then there are the ghosts of Adam's past, the women who disappeared. They exist in the shadows of the story, never fully present but always there. They are the whispers in the street, the faces in the photographs, the names that have been forgotten. Each one was once Alice, once a woman who believed she had found something extraordinary. And now they are gone. Their presence haunts Alice even before she realizes it, manifesting in her unease, in the way she starts to second-guess the man she has given her life to. Miriam, the woman who tries to warn Alice, serves as the only direct link to these missing women. She is the voice of reason, the one person who dares to pull Alice from the illusion before it is too late. But her warnings come in riddles, half-truths wrapped in fear, and by the time Alice begins to understand, she is already in too deep. What makes Killing Me Softly so gripping is the way it plays with its characters, making the audience question who they can trust. Alice is the protagonist, but she is not always sure of her own reality. Adam is both a lover and a threat, a man who can make a woman feel worshipped while making her question everything she knows. And the women who came before Alice? They are the mystery, the puzzle pieces that never quite fit until it is too late. By the time Alice reaches her breaking point, she is no longer the woman who once looked at Adam with nothing but admiration. She is a woman who has seen too much, who knows too much. And when the final confrontation arrives, it is not just a battle for the truth, it is a battle for survival. In the end, Killing Me Softly is a story about power. The power of love, the power of obsession, the power of truth, and the power of the unknown. It is a story that asks the question, when love feels like fate, how do you know if it is leading you to something beautiful or something deadly? And in that question lies the true heart of every character in this story. The making of Killing Me Softly, 2002, was as intriguing as the story itself. A film that walks the fine line between seduction and suspense, it brought together an intense cast, a daring script, and a director known for capturing deep emotional turmoil. But beyond what was seen on screen, there were strange occurrences, behind-the-scenes challenges, and little-known details that added an extra layer of mystery to the film's legacy. One of the most fascinating aspects of the film was its unexpected casting choices. Heather Graham and Joseph Fiennes, both known for very different kinds of roles, were brought together for this psychological thriller, creating an unusual but compelling on-screen chemistry. Graham, who had been celebrated for roles in Boogie Nights and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, had never played a character quite as emotionally layered as Alice. Meanwhile, Fiennes had been lauded for his romantic, brooding roles in films like Shakespeare in Love, but Killing Me Softly required him to walk a much darker path. Graham later admitted that filming the more intense scenes with Fiennes was both thrilling and unsettling. The passion between their characters had to feel all-consuming, but with an underlying tension that made the audience uneasy. To achieve this, director Chen encouraged both actors to immerse themselves in their roles to the point where reality and fiction blurred. There were moments on set where Graham reportedly felt genuinely unnerved by Fiennes' transformation into Adam, mirroring Alice's experience in the film. Joseph Fiennes, on the other hand, took a method approach to his character, keeping his interactions with the cast and crew deliberately cold between scenes. While he wasn't fully in character all the time, he would often distance himself, creating an air of mystery. He later revealed in interviews that the psychological aspect of Adam Tallis fascinated him. "I didn't want him to be an obvious villain," Fiennes explained. "I wanted the audience to second-guess themselves about him, just like Alice does." Interestingly, Fiennes was not the first choice for the role of Adam. Before he was cast, several other actors were considered, including some who were known for playing darker, more traditionally dangerous characters. The studio initially wanted someone with a more openly menacing presence, but the director insisted on Fiennes precisely because he wasn't the obvious choice. "The scariest people," Chen said in an interview, "are the ones who make you trust them first." The director himself was an unusual choice for the film. Chen was best known for his critically acclaimed Chinese historical dramas, particularly Farewell, My Concubine, a masterpiece that explored themes of love, betrayal, and identity. He had never directed a Hollywood thriller before, and his involvement in Killing Me Softly was a bold departure from his usual style. Some crew members were initially skeptical of how he would handle a psychological thriller with erotic elements, but Kaige brought an entirely different perspective to the project. His background in poetic, visually stunning cinema meant that Killing Me Softly had a distinct aesthetic, almost dreamlike, even in its most intense moments. One of the strangest things about the film's production was how difficult it was to find the right tone. The script went through multiple rewrites, shifting between a more straightforward erotic thriller and a deeply psychological, noir-inspired mystery. At one point, the story leaned more heavily into Alice's potential descent into paranoia. Was Adam truly dangerous, or was she losing her grip on reality? Some early drafts even suggested that the entire story could be from Alice's distorted point of view, making the audience question what was real and what was imagined. However, test screenings dramatically altered the final cut of the film. The studio was concerned that the ambiguity left audiences frustrated rather than intrigued. As a result, several scenes were red-hot to make Adam's role clearer, pushing the film into more of a traditional thriller structure rather than a psychological mystery. Some fans believe that an alternate cut of the film might have existed, one where Alice's doubts and fears played a bigger role in the story rather than the more straightforward cat-and-mouse game that made it into the final version. Another odd piece of trivia is how controversial the film's intimate scenes were. Killing Me Softly leans heavily into the passion between Alice and Adam, using their physical connection as both a representation of desire and a source of unease. The love scenes were shot with a raw intensity that was meant to make the audience feel both captivated and uncomfortable. However, after the first screenings, some distributors feared the film was too much for mainstream audiences, leading to several versions of the film being edited for different markets. Some international versions of Killing Me Softly feature extended sequences that were cut from the U.S. release, making it a film that exists in multiple forms. Depending on where you watch it, the film's marketing also had an unusual trajectory. Initially, Killing Me Softly was expected to be a major thriller with an A-list cast, but its release strategy was inconsistent, with some countries getting theatrical releases while others saw it quietly pushed onto DVD. Some speculate that the studio lost confidence in how to market a thriller that was both erotic and deeply psychological, too intense for mainstream audiences, yet not fully dark enough to sit alongside classic noir thrillers. This led to Killing Me Softly becoming something of a cult film, one that people stumbled upon rather than one that made waves upon release. One of the strangest real-world consequences of the film came years later, when fans began drawing comparisons between Killing Me Softly and true crime cases involving whirlwind romances that ended in disappearances. Several stories eerily mirrored Alice's experience, with women meeting charismatic, mysterious men only to discover dark secrets hidden beneath the surface. Some film enthusiasts have even argued that Killing Me Softly was ahead of its time, predicting the dangerous allure of certain personalities that later became infamous in real-life criminal cases. Another odd behind-the-scenes fact is that the film's score was originally intended to be much darker and more experimental. The composer initially designed a soundtrack that used haunting, unconventional melodies to reflect Alice's spiraling fear, incorporating sounds that would subtly unsettle the viewer. However, late in production, the studio decided to soften the musical approach, shifting toward a more traditional thriller score. Some critics later speculated that had the original, more avant-garde score remained, Killing Me Softly might have had a much different reception. Perhaps one of the most bizarre facts about Killing Me Softly is that it was one of the last films of its era to be made in a way that feels like a relic of the 90s thriller boom. Films like Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction, and The Hand That Rocks the Cradle had defined the genre of erotic thrillers, but by the time Killing Me Softly was released in 2002, that style of filmmaking was becoming rare. Audiences had shifted toward more psychological horror and crime thrillers, and the intense, sensual thrillers of the previous decade were fading out. This made Killing Me Softly feel like a film caught between two eras, a throwback to a genre that was disappearing even as it tried to reinvent it. Despite its rocky release and mixed reception at the time, Killing Me Softly has found a second life as a film that refuses to be forgotten. Its blend of passion and paranoia, its enigmatic performances, and its strange production history have made it something of a cult favorite. Some viewers see it as a flawed thriller, while others recognize it as a film that was trying to do something different but got lost in the process. Whatever the case, it remains a fascinating watch, a film that continues to draw people in, just like Adam Tallis himself, a man too charismatic to ignore and too dangerous to trust. From its opening moments to its haunting conclusion, Killing Me Softly, 2002, is a film that thrives on duality, love and obsession, passion and paranoia, security and fear. It is a story of a woman swept away by something that feels like fate, only to realize that fate may not be as kind as she once believed. Through its most significant events, the film crafts an experience that forces the audience to question how well we can truly know another person, how easily love can turn to fear, and whether the thrill of the unknown is worth the risk of losing oneself entirely. The first major event that sets the tone for the film is Alice's initial meeting with Adam. It is not a slow burn, not a gradual connection. It is instant, overpowering, and utterly consuming. The way the scene is framed is deliberate. The world around them fades, the noise of the street is reduced to a dull hum, and time itself seems to slow as their eyes lock. This moment is crucial because it establishes the idea of inevitability. Alice does not choose Adam in a rational sense, she is pulled toward him, as if something larger than herself is making the decision for her. The cinematography enhances this sense of destiny. capturing their initial attraction in lingering close-ups and a charged silence that speaks louder than words. Critically, this moment embodies the idea of love as a force of nature, a theme that runs through the entire film. But as with any force of nature, what begins as something beautiful can just as easily become something destructive. This meeting does not just set the plot into motion, it sets the emotional tone for everything that follows. Alice is not just falling in love, she is surrendering to something she does not fully understand. Her impulsive decision to abandon her stable life and marry Adam within days of meeting him is the film's first true turning point. This event is crucial because it challenges the audience. Do we see this as romantic, or do we see it as reckless? The film never explicitly tells us which perspective to take, and that ambiguity is what makes this moment so fascinating. From Alice's perspective, it is a grand, once-in-a-lifetime love story. But from the outside looking in, it is a warning sign. Passion this intense is not always love. It can also be possession. The way the film plays with perspective here is one of its strongest elements. To Alice, her actions make perfect sense. To the audience, they are the first step down a dangerous path. As Alice and Adam settle into married life, the atmosphere of the film begins to shift. The passion is still there, but something else begins to creep in, an unease that lingers at the edges of their world. The first time Alice notices something unsettling about Adam, it is subtle. He avoids questions about his past. He dismisses her curiosity with charm, with easy smiles and vague reassurances. But what makes this moment so effective is that it is not an immediate red flag, it is something small, something that can be excused. This is what makes Adam such a compelling character. He is not openly threatening, not obviously manipulative. He does not need to be. His control comes from the way he makes Alice doubt herself, the way he makes her second-guess her instincts. This slow psychological unraveling reaches a breaking point when Alice receives the mysterious package. Inside, she finds a photograph, Adam with another woman. The image itself is simple, but its implications are massive. Up until this moment, Alice's fears have been vague, intangible. But now, she has something solid. Something real. What makes this moment so important is not just the discovery itself, but the way Adam reacts. Instead of denying it outright, he turns the suspicion back on her. He makes her feel like the unreasonable one. "Why are you letting strangers get into your head?" he asks, his voice calm, almost disappointed. And just like that, he shifts the power dynamic. This moment is a masterclass in manipulation. Adam does not fight the accusation. He makes Alice question why she is accusing him at all. This tactic, turning doubt into guilt, is something that makes Adam such a fascinating character from a psychological standpoint. He is not the kind of villain who overtly threatens or intimidates. He makes Alice feel like the villain for doubting him in the first place. This is what makes his control so terrifying. It is not about force, it is about belief. As Alice's suspicions grow, the film leans further into its psychological thriller elements. One of the most pivotal scenes comes when Alice discovers the hidden box of letters, notes from women who once loved Adam, women who are now nowhere to be found. The scene is shot with deliberate pacing, allowing Alice's fear to build as she reads each letter. The film does not rely on dramatic music or exaggerated reactions. Instead, the horror of this moment comes from the silence, from the way Alice's breathing changes, from the way her hands tremble as she pieces together the reality of the situation. This scene is effective because it is not just a revelation, it is a shift in Alice's character. Up until this point, she has been uncertain, torn between love and fear. But as she reads these letters, something in her changes. The woman who once saw Adam as her destiny is now realizing that she may have walked into a carefully laid trap. The Alice who emerged from that room is not the same Alice who walked in. But just as she begins to see the truth, the danger escalates. When Alice confronts Adam, his reaction is not what she expects. He does not rage. He does not break. Instead, he looks at her with something that almost resembles disappointment. "You don't trust me," he says, shaking his head. "After everything we've been through." And for a moment, Alice hesitates. This is what makes the film's psychological horror so effective. It is not just about fear. It is about doubt. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, Alice hesitates. And in that hesitation, Adam tightens his hold. The final act of the film is where everything unravels. Alice, now fully aware of the danger she is in, attempts to escape. But Adam is always one step ahead. The chase is not physical, it is psychological. He does not need to trap her with force. He traps her with uncertainty. He plays on her emotions, reminding her of their passion, their connection. "You're the only one who truly understands me," he tells her, and for a second, just a second, she wants to believe him. But then the final revelation comes, the one that confirms everything. The missing women. The truth about Adam's past. And suddenly, everything falls into place. Alice is no longer torn between two realities. She sees things clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, she does what she must. The climax of the film is not just a physical confrontation, it is a battle for control. For the first time, Alice refuses to let Adam dictate the narrative. She refuses to let him twist her fear into guilt. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifts. The Alice who once surrendered to love is now fighting for her life. The resolution of killing. But then the final revelation comes, the one that confirms everything. The missing women. The truth about Adam's past. And suddenly, everything falls into place. Alice is no longer torn between two realities. She sees things clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, she does what she must. The climax of the film is not just a physical confrontation, it is a battle for control. For the first time, Alice refuses to let Adam dictate the narrative. She refuses to let him twist her fear into guilt. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifts. The Alice who once surrendered to love is now fighting for her life. The resolution of killing me softly is not a neat, happy ending. Alice survives, but she is not the same person she once was. She is no longer the woman who believed in fate. She is no longer the woman who thought love could overpower doubt. She walks away, but she carries the scars of what she has been through. And in a way, that is what makes the film's ending so haunting. Because how do you ever truly escape someone like Adam? The impact of killing me softly is found in these moments. The small, insidious shifts in power, the slow descent from passion to paranoia, the realization that love and danger can sometimes feel exactly the same. It is a film that lingers in the mind, forcing the audience to question how easily devotion can become destruction. And in the end, that is what makes it so unforgettable. The making of Killing Me Softly, 2002, was just as layered and enigmatic as the film itself. A project that blended passion with paranoia, romance with psychological horror, and intense character studies with a mystery that slowly unraveled, the film was a challenge both artistically and logistically. Behind the carefully curated shots and hauntingly intimate moments was a production filled with unexpected choices, creative risks, and unusual behind-the-scenes occurrences that shaped the final product in ways that not even the filmmakers had fully anticipated. One of the most fascinating aspects of Killing Me Softly was the decision to bring in director Chen, a filmmaker best known for his deeply poetic and visually stunning works, such as Farewell, My Concubine. His background was in historical dramas, stories filled with rich symbolism and slow-burning emotional depth. So, when he took on Killing Me Softly, a contemporary psychological thriller that relied on tension and unpredictability, it was an unexpected yet intriguing choice. Kaige approached the film like a puzzle, treating Alice's journey not as a straightforward thriller but as a descent into uncertainty, a story about perception rather than pure suspense. He wanted the film to be more than just a cautionary tale about love gone wrong. He wanted it to feel like an experience, where the audience was placed directly into Alice's perspective, feeling the shifts in her reality just as she did. This approach heavily influenced the film's cinematography, which is one of its most distinctive elements. Instead of shooting scenes in a conventional thriller style, Kaige and his cinematographer used a mix of intimate, claustrophobic close-ups and eerily distant wide shots. The idea was to create a visual contrast. When Alice is consumed by passion, the camera moves in close, making the world feel small, almost suffocating. But as her paranoia grows, the shots become wider, making her feel isolated in an environment that once felt warm and secure. Heather Graham later revealed that the filming process often mirrored Alice's own emotional journey. Some scenes, particularly those capturing the intensity of Alice and Adam's relationship, were filmed in long, unbroken takes to heighten the feeling of urgency and raw emotion. The crew intentionally limited the number of rehearsals for these moments, allowing the actors to react more naturally to each other. This method created an organic chemistry between Graham and Joseph Fiennes, making their connection feel authentic, even when it veered into dangerous territory. Joseph Fiennes, known for his roles in Shakespeare in Love and Elizabeth, was cast against type as Adam Tallis, a decision that was met with curiosity and skepticism. The studio had initially considered actors with a more traditionally dangerous presence, but Kaige insisted on Fiennes, believing that his natural charm would make the character far more unsettling. "A man like Adam," Kaige once explained in an interview, "is not the kind of man you are afraid of immediately. He is the kind of man who makes you fall in love first." To fully embrace the role, Fiennes immersed himself in the psychology of manipulation, studying how real-life sociopaths use charm and persuasion to create a sense of trust. His performance was deeply nuanced, never overtly aggressive, never openly threatening, but always teetering on the edge of something unsettling. In fact, his ability to shift between warmth and menace was so effective that some members of the crew admitted feeling uneasy around him between takes, even when he was perfectly polite. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes details involves a particular deleted scene that was cut after test screenings. In this scene, Alice discovers not just letters from Adam's past lovers but video recordings, tapes that seem to show Adam in intimate moments with women who are no longer in his life. The footage is grainy, unsettling, and heavily implied to be filmed without the women's knowledge. Test audiences reportedly found this scene too disturbing, pushing the film beyond the psychological thriller genre into something almost horror-like. The studio decided to remove it, fearing that it would make Adam too irredeemable, shifting the film's balance away from ambiguity and into outright terror. Another unusual moment from production came from the choreography of the love scenes, which were an essential part of the film's atmosphere. Unlike traditional romance films, where such scenes are typically choreographed to look passionate but controlled, Killing Me Softly required something that felt almost hypnotic, desire mixed with danger. Kaige worked closely with movement coaches to ensure that every moment between Alice and Adam felt charged, even when nothing overtly threatening was happening. The goal was to make the audience feel drawn in, much like Alice, while simultaneously planting the seed of unease. Heather Graham, who had done sensual scenes before in films like Boogie Nights, admitted that these were some of the most intense she had ever filmed, not because of explicit content, but because of the underlying psychological weight they carried. "You're not just acting out love," she once said in an interview. "You're acting out manipulation, possession, obsession. And that's what made it so different." The film's sound design also played a crucial role in shaping its tension. Many of the sound effects were deliberately heightened: the sound of Adam's breath near Alice's ear, the barely perceptible creak of a floorboard when she starts to suspect she is being watched, the eerie silence before key moments. There is almost no traditional horror music in the film, but instead, it uses sound to create psychological unease. One particularly eerie behind-the-scenes story involves a moment when the crew was filming the confrontation scene between Alice and Adam in their home. As the cameras rolled, the power in the building suddenly cut out, plunging the set into complete darkness. The timing was so uncanny, happening just as Fiennes' character was about to step forward menacingly. Another bizarre fact is that the film's ending was res-hot at the last minute due to studio concerns that the original conclusion was too ambiguous. In Kaige's first version, Alice's final confrontation with Adam ended in uncertainty, with no clear indication of whether she was truly free from him or if he had managed to manipulate his way back into her life. The studio insisted on something more definitive, leading to a new ending that was filmed only weeks before the film's release. Some fans believe that the original ending might have made the film even more psychologically haunting, as it would have left audiences questioning whether Alice had truly escaped. Despite the film's troubled marketing and mixed critical reception, it has since developed a cult following. Some viewers appreciate it as an underrated psychological thriller, while others enjoy it for its unique blend of seduction and suspense. Its exploration of the fine line between love and control remains deeply relevant, especially in an era where stories of coercive relationships and hidden dangers have become more widely discussed. Looking back at the production of Killing Me Softly, it is clear that the film was shaped by creative risks, unconventional decisions, and a deep commitment to capturing the unsettling nature of desire turned dangerous. From its hypnotic cinematography to its unsettling performances, from its eerie sound design to the psychological weight carried by every interaction, the film remains a fascinating entry in the thriller genre. Whether one sees it as a masterpiece of slow-burning suspense or a flawed but intriguing experiment, it is a film that refuses to be easily forgotten. Much like the love story at its center, a love that lures you in, holds you close, and whispers, "Trust me," even as you begin to doubt everything. The world of Killing Me Softly is as much a character as Alice or Adam. It is a place that shifts, subtly changing along with Alice's emotions, wrapping around her like a dream before tightening like a trap. The settings of the film, each street, each room, each quiet, empty space, are carefully chosen to reinforce the story's themes of passion, obsession, and paranoia. Every location serves a purpose, each one reflecting Alice's descent into uncertainty. At first, the world feels open, thrilling, and filled with possibility. But as the story unfolds, those same places start to feel suffocating, just like Alice's love for Adam. The film opens in London, a city that is both vibrant and impersonal. Alice walks through its streets, surrounded by people, yet alone. It is here, in the middle of a bustling world, that she first locks eyes with Adam. The contrast is striking, the chaos of the city around them, yet in that one moment, everything else fades. This is intentional. London, with its cold architecture and endless motion, represents the life Alice is about to leave behind. Her world here is structured, predictable. The city's tall buildings, its symmetry, its constant hum of activity, it all serves as a backdrop for what she is about to abandon. The cinematography in these opening scenes reinforces this contrast. The shots are wide, distanced. Alice is often framed in a way that makes her feel small in the vastness of the city. The camera captures her through reflections in glass, through crowded spaces, emphasizing that she is just one of many, lost in the anonymity of city life. But when Adam appears, the framing shifts. Suddenly, the camera pulls in, focusing tightly on Alice's face, on her breath, on the way her body reacts to him. The world around her blurs. He becomes her focal point, and in that moment, everything changes. When Alice follows Adam to his apartment, the setting shifts dramatically. His space is unlike anything she knows, minimalist, sparse, yet intimate. The apartment is dimly lit, with warm tones that make it feel like a world separate from the cold streets outside. The way the light falls on Adam, the way shadows play across the walls, it all makes him feel larger than life, almost mythical. The space reflects his character, controlled, intentional, yet full of unspoken tension. There is nothing soft or chaotic in his home. Everything is in its place, carefully curated, just as he presents himself. It is seductive, and Alice is drawn in. The way cinematography is used in these early scenes is crucial. When Alice and Adam are together, the camera moves differently. It follows them closely, mimicking their breath, their movements, making their connection feel immediate and inescapable. The lighting shifts, using deep shadows and warm highlights to create a sense of intimacy, Yet something about it feels just a little too controlled, too perfect. This is not just love, it is something more consuming, something Alice does not yet understand. As Alice moves into Adam's world, the settings begin to reflect her growing sense of unease. Their home together, once filled with passion, starts to feel isolating. The very walls that once felt like safety begin to close in. The lighting changes. What was once warm becomes dimmer, colder. Rooms that felt spacious begin to feel smaller. The cinematography follows this shift, using tighter framing, off-kilter angles that subtly suggest that something is wrong. The audience may not immediately notice, but subconsciously, they begin to feel it. Something is not as it should. Beta outdoor scenes change as well. Early in the film, the world outside is bright and filled with motion. Alice moves through the city, free and uninhibited. But as her suspicions about Adam grow, the city starts to feel different. The streets are quieter. People seem to watch her from a distance. The sense of being seen becomes a recurring theme. There are moments where Alice looks over her shoulder, where the camera lingers just a second too long on strangers passing by. The world that once felt so big now feels filled with hidden threats. The audience, like Alice, starts to wonder, is she being watched? Or is it just in her head? One of the most haunting settings in the film is the hidden room where Alice finds Adam's secrets. It is dimly lit, with muted colors, a stark contrast to the passion-filled world they once shared. This room is not designed to be seen. It is a space of memory, of the past, of the women who came before her. The way it is shot reinforces the horror of the moment. Alice is alone in the frame, the camera slowly circling her, making her feel trapped. Objects that seemed ordinary before, a piece of jewelry, an old letter, suddenly carry immense weight. The lighting is unnatural, casting long shadows that distort her surroundings. This is the moment where Alice's perception fully changes, and the setting reflects that. This room is not just a place. It is a revelation. The use of mirrors throughout the film is another key cinematic element. Mirrors appear in subtle ways, Alice catching her own reflection as she begins to question Adam, the way the camera captures Adam's reflection rather than his actual face in moments of tension. There is a scene where Alice stands in front of a mirror, touching her own face as if trying to remind herself that she is real, that she is still herself. The symbolism here is powerful. Who is Alice becoming? Mirrors are used to reinforce the theme of duality, of seeing oneself differently as the truth unravels. One of the most visually striking moments comes near the climax, when Alice attempts to escape. The cinematography shifts into handheld, unsteady shots. The camera moves frantically, mirroring her own desperation. There is a scene where Alice stands in front of a mirror, touching her own face as if trying to remind herself that she is real, that she is still herself. The symbolism here is powerful. Who is Alice becoming? Mirrors are used to reinforce the theme of duality, of seeing oneself differently as the truth unravels. One of the most visually striking moments comes near the climax, when Alice attempts to escape. The cinematography shifts into handheld, unsteady shots. The camera moves frantically, mirroring her own desperation. The lighting becomes harsh, unnatural, casting stark contrasts between light and darkness. The sense of being hunted is heightened not just by what is happening in the plot, but by the way it is filmed. The once beautiful romantic world has now turned hostile, and every visual choice reinforces this. The final confrontation between Alice and Adam is where the setting plays its most crucial role. The space is familiar, the home they once shared. But now, it feels entirely different. The warm tones are gone, replaced by deep shadows and cold lighting. The walls seem to close in. The cinematography captures Alice's shift in power. Where once she was framed in ways that made her look small, she is now filmed from angles that make her feel dominant. The balance has shifted. The space that once belonged to Adam is now the setting of his downfall. The final moments of the film leave the audience in a world that feels different than the one they started in. Alice, once caught in a dream, is now fully awake. The city, once full of possibility, is now a place of survival. The way the camera lingers on her in the final scenes, the way the lighting and framing change to show her as someone who has escaped but not forgotten, it all reinforces the emotional weight of the story. The settings in Killing Me Softly are not just locations. They are reflections of Alice's inner world. The way they shift, the way they change in tone, lighting, and framing, all of it is carefully designed to make the audience feel what Alice feels. From the seductive glow of Adam's apartment to the cold, creeping horror of their home, from the open streets of London to the claustrophobic spaces where Alice discovers the truth, every setting is a piece of the story, guiding us deeper into her unraveling reality. And in the end, when she finally steps away from Adam's world, the setting tells us everything we need to know. She is no longer the same Alice. The world is no longer the same. And neither is the way she sees it. The making of Killing Me Softly, 2002, was as intense and enigmatic as the film itself. A psychological thriller wrapped in erotic tension, the production demanded more than just passionate performances. It required an atmosphere that blurred the line between romance and danger. Behind the scenes, the cast and crew worked through creative risks, unexpected challenges, and even eerie coincidences that mirrored the film's unsettling themes. Every aspect of the filmmaking process, from the chemistry between the leads to the eerie lighting choices, was carefully crafted to immerse the audience in Alice's experience. And yet, the journey to bring Killing Me Softly to life was anything but smooth. One of the most intriguing aspects of the film's production was the dynamic between Heather Graham and Joseph Fiennes. The film hinges entirely on their chemistry, which needed to feel both seductive and unsettling. Their characters, Alice and Adam, are drawn together in a whirlwind of passion that quickly turns into something darker, and the actors had to make their connection feel undeniable yet laced with an undercurrent of unease. To achieve this, director Chen encouraged them to spend time together off-set, not to rehearse, but to build a natural rhythm with one another. He wanted them to feel familiar, like lovers who knew each other deeply, but with just enough distance to allow for the mystery and suspicion that the story required. Heather Graham later revealed in interviews that working with Fiennes was both exhilarating and unnerving. He had this ability to switch between being completely charming and then suddenly distant, and I think that really helped in the film, she recalled. There were moments when I wasn't sure if he was still in character or if he was just thinking about something else, and that added to the tension on screen. This blurred line between acting and reality became a key part of their performances. Fiennes, known for his immersive approach to roles, deliberately kept a certain air of mystery about himself throughout production, making sure that Graham never felt completely at ease around him, even when the cameras weren't rolling. Another interesting behind-the-scenes fact is that Kaige's directing style was very different from what the cast was used to. Best known for his visually poetic historical dramas like Farewell My Concubine, Kaige approached Killing Me Softly more like a psychological exploration than a conventional thriller. He was deeply interested in how silence could be more powerful than dialogue, and how a single glance or hesitation could convey as much fear as a dramatic confrontation. He instructed his actors to hold their pauses longer than usual, creating moments of suspense that felt unnatural, on purpose. Joseph Fiennes later admitted that he found this technique both fascinating and frustrating. There were takes where I thought, are we going too slow? But then when I watched it back, I saw what Kaige was doing. He was making the tension stretch out, making it feel real. This approach to acting required immense patience, and some scenes took multiple takes just to get the perfect balance between desire and dread. One of the biggest challenges in filming was getting the intimate scenes just right. Unlike a traditional romance, the love scenes in Killing Me Softly weren't meant to be purely passionate. They were meant to make the audience feel something deeper, something uneasy. These moments had to walk a delicate line between attraction and danger, making it clear that Alice was caught in something she couldn't control. To prepare, the actors worked closely with a movement coach, someone who specialized in choreographing intimate scenes while keeping them organic. Heather Graham and Joseph Fiennes rehearsed the sequences in a way that felt more like a dance, learning to anticipate each other's movements, to react naturally while staying within the precise visual framing needed for each shot. The goal was to make their interactions feel instinctive, as though the characters were being pulled toward each other by something beyond their control. Despite these careful preparations, some of these scenes were incredibly difficult to shoot. One particularly intense moment, where Alice finds herself questioning whether her passion for Adam is love or manipulation, required multiple takes because the emotional intensity kept shifting. The scene was filmed late at night, with dim lighting and long pauses between movements. After one take, Graham admitted she felt completely drained, like I had been pulled into Alice's head. The scene eventually became one of the most memorable in the film, precisely because of how much uncertainty it conveyed. The cinematography of the film played a huge role in its unsettling tone, and this was something that was carefully crafted behind the scenes. The crew used hidden camera-style shots, distorted reflections, and off-center framing to create a subconscious sense of unease. The scene was filmed late at night, with dim lighting and long pauses between movements. After one take, Graham admitted she felt completely drained, like I had been pulled into Alice's head. The scene eventually became one of the most memorable in the film, precisely because of how much uncertainty it conveyed. The cinematography of the film played a huge role in its unsettling tone, and this was something that was carefully crafted behind the scenes. The crew used hidden camera-style shots, distorted reflections, and off-center framing to create a subconscious sense of unease. At times, cameras were placed in unexpected locations, behind glass, in mirrors, or at unusual angles, to make it feel like Alice was constantly being watched. One particularly eerie coincidence happened during the filming of one of the most pivotal scenes, the discovery of Adam's secrets. The scene was shot in a dimly lit room filled with carefully placed objects meant to hint at Adam's past. As the crew was setting up the shot, a light bulb suddenly exploded on set, plunging the room into darkness. No one was near it, and there was no clear reason for the malfunction. Some crew members jokingly suggested that the film was cursed, given its themes of obsession and danger. Others simply chalked it up to the intense energy on set that night. But that wasn't the only strange occurrence. During another scene, where Alice begins to suspect she is being followed, Heather Graham had to walk through a nearly empty street late at night. As they were filming, a real-life passerby stopped and watched the scene, completely unaware that it was a film shoot. The man later told a crew member that he thought Graham looked genuinely terrified, and for a moment he had debated calling the police. The fact that an actual stranger mistook her performance for reality was a testament to how deeply she had immersed herself in Alice's fear. The ending of the film was another part of production that saw significant changes. Originally, the film's climax was meant to be more ambiguous, leaving open the possibility that Alice might never truly escape Adam's influence. However, after test screenings, the studio pushed for a clearer resolution, feeling that audiences needed a stronger sense of closure. As a result, some scenes were res-hot just weeks before the film's release, giving the ending a more definitive tone. Some critics later argued that the original, more ambiguous ending might have made the film even more psychologically haunting. Despite the challenges, the cast and crew had moments of levity on set. Joseph Fiennes, known for his serious approach to acting, surprised everyone by occasionally breaking into impromptu Shakespearean monologues between takes, a nod to his famous role in Shakespeare in Love. Heather Graham, on the other hand, found an outlet in humor, often making light of the film's darker moments by mock-dramatically reenacting scenes in an exaggerated soap opera style when cameras weren't rolling. One of the most unexpected revelations after the film's release was how much it resonated with audiences in ways the filmmakers hadn't entirely anticipated. While the film was marketed primarily as an erotic thriller, many viewers interpreted it as a psychological study of manipulation and control, drawing comparisons to real-life cases of coercive relationships. Some people even reached out to the filmmakers, sharing personal stories of relationships that eerily mirrored Alice's experiences. This real-world impact gave Killing Me Softly an unexpected layer of significance beyond just being a suspenseful movie. Looking back, Killing Me Softly was a film shaped by artistic risks, intense performances, and eerie behind-the-scenes moments that blurred the line between fiction and reality. The production itself mirrored the themes of the movie, a story of passion, doubt, and danger unfolding in ways no one could fully predict. And whether viewed as a thriller, a cautionary tale, or a psychological study, it remains a film that lingers long after the final frame, just like the secrets hidden beneath Adam's seemingly perfect exterior. Beneath the surface of Killing Me Softly lies a world of meaning, a tangled web of themes and symbols that elevate the film beyond its erotic thriller roots. It is a story about love, but not in the way that fairy tales tell it. It is about obsession, power, and the intoxicating danger of desire. It explores the ways in which people can be consumed by passion, blinded by it, and ultimately trapped in something far more sinister than they ever imagined. The film is rich with symbolism, each visual choice and narrative beat reinforcing its deeper messages, painting a portrait of a woman caught between the dream of love and the nightmare of its reality. One of the most dominant themes in Killing Me Softly is the illusion of love versus the reality of control. From the moment Alice meets Adam, she is overwhelmed by something that feels like fate. Their attraction is instant, their connection undeniable. There is no slow build, no gradual development, just an urgent, uncontrollable pull that draws them together. Alice abandons her life for him, surrendering herself to a passion that feels larger than anything she has ever known. But as the story unfolds, what first seemed like love starts to reveal itself as something far more dangerous. Adam does not love Alice in the way she believes love should feel. He does not just want her, he wants to own her. His presence, once comforting, becomes suffocating. His devotion, once exhilarating, starts to feel like a cage. And yet, Alice struggles to recognize it for what it is. This is the heart of the film's emotional weight, how easily control can be mistaken for devotion. How the very things that make love feel powerful, its intensity, its exclusivity, its urgency, can also be the things that make it destructive. The theme of manipulation is deeply woven into the narrative, not just in the way Adam treats Alice, but in the way the film itself manipulates its audience. The cinematography plays with perspective, forcing viewers to see things through Alice's eyes. In the beginning, the world is warm, intimate, seductive. The camera lingers on Adam in ways that make him feel safe, almost too perfect. But as Alice's reality shifts, so does the way the film presents him. The angles become sharper, the lighting colder. The same man, in the same setting, suddenly feels different. This shift mirrors the way emotional manipulation works. It does not happen all at once. It creeps in, slowly distorting reality until the truth is unrecognizable. Another powerful theme that runs through the film is fear disguised as excitement. Alice is drawn to Adam because he makes her feel alive. His unpredictability, his intensity, these things thrill her, making her feel like she is stepping outside the confines of her ordinary life. But what she does not realize is that this thrill is not love. It is danger. And the most insidious part? She cannot tell the difference. This theme speaks to a deeper psychological truth, that sometimes, when people mistake adrenaline for passion, they walk willingly into the arms of their own destruction. Throughout the film, symbolism is used to reinforce these ideas, often in ways that are subtle yet deeply effective. One of the most striking symbols is the use of mirrors. Mirrors appear repeatedly in Alice's journey, often in moments where she is beginning to question herself. She looks at her reflection, touching her face as if trying to remember who she is. Mirrors appear repeatedly in Alice's journey, often in moments where she is beginning to question herself. She looks at her reflection, touching her face as if trying to remember who she is. In some scenes, the camera captures Adam's reflection rather than his actual face, hinting at the idea that she is seeing only a version of him, a reflection of what he wants her to see, rather than who he truly is. Mirrors symbolize identity, but in this film, they also symbolize distortion. Alice is not just looking at herself, she is looking at the woman Adam has shaped her into. Another important symbol is the act of climbing, which ties directly to Adam's past as a mountaineer. Mountains represent power, control, and the illusion of conquest, and Adam is a man who has built his life around the idea of conquering the unconquerable. He does not just climb mountains. He dominates them. He faces nature itself and bends it to his will. This mirrors the way he treats Alice. She is not just a partner to him. She is a challenge. A peak to be scaled, a force to be mastered. And just as his past lovers disappeared after he won them, there is an unspoken question lingering in the air. Will Alice suffer the same fate? The theme of secrets and buried truths is another thread that runs through the film, manifesting in both the plot and the setting. Adam's past is a mystery, deliberately obscured. He does not speak about the women who came before Alice. When she asks, he changes the subject, or worse, makes her feel guilty for wanting to know. The house they share, once a place of passion, starts to feel like a prison, filled with unspoken things lurking beneath the surface. And then, when Alice begins to dig, literally and figuratively, she finds the hidden letters. They are tucked away, unseen, much like the truth about Adam himself. This discovery is not just about the past. It is about the power of what is hidden, and the danger of what remains unknown. Water, another recurring symbol, plays a critical role in the film's visual storytelling. Water is often associated with cleansing, renewal, and transformation. But in Killing Me Softly, it takes on a different meaning. When Alice is submerged in a bathtub, the camera lingers on her as she closes her eyes, as if trying to escape into the warmth of the water. It is one of the only times she looks peaceful, but this peace is deceptive. Water, in this case, represents temporary escape, a false sense of security. She cannot live underwater. She cannot stay submerged forever. And when she emerges, reality comes rushing back. The illusion never lasts. One of the most haunting symbols in the film is the unseen presence of Adam's past lovers. They are never fully shown, never given voices, but their absence is louder than their presence could ever be. Their existence lingers in whispers, in photographs, in objects left behind. They are ghosts, not in a literal sense, but in the way trauma leaves an imprint, the way history repeats itself. The fear that Alice feels is not just for herself, it is for them. For the realization that she may be following in their footsteps. That she may become just another name erased. The film also subtly explores the theme of identity loss in relationships. In the beginning, Alice is confident, independent, a woman who knows herself. But as she falls deeper into Adam's world, she starts to disappear. She makes choices that feel like hers, but they are not. She begins to dress differently, to speak differently. She is no longer living her life, she is living his. This is one of the most chilling aspects of Killing Me Softly. It does not just show the danger of a physically abusive relationship. It shows the much more insidious, much quieter danger of being erased, piece by piece, until there is nothing left. And then, there is the theme of escape. Alice's journey is one of realization, but realization alone is not enough. She must act. She must break free. The final act of the film is not just about confronting Adam. It is about reclaiming herself. The way the camera captures her in those last moments, her posture, the way she moves, tells the audience everything. She is no longer under his control. She has taken back her own narrative. And yet, there is no triumphant victory. No grand speech. Just the quiet, unsettling truth that some scars never fully fade. In the end, Killing Me Softly is a story about perception versus reality. About the ways we trick ourselves into believing something is love, even when it is anything but. It is about the seduction of danger, the blindness of desire, and the power of waking up before it is too late. And long after the film ends, these themes remain, lingering like a whisper in the back of the mind, asking the question, how do we know if the love we trust is real or just a beautifully crafted illusion? The filmmaking techniques behind Killing Me Softly, 2002, were as calculated as the psychological unraveling at the heart of the story. Every decision, from the cinematography to the editing, from the way sound was used to the pacing of the scenes, was designed to immerse the audience in Alice's world, a world that shifts from passion to paranoia, from euphoria to entrapment. The film does not rely on traditional thriller tropes of overt danger or explicit threats. Instead, it builds its tension through suggestion, through subtle distortions in perspective, through moments that feel almost normal, until they daunt. Director Chen Kaige, known for his poetic and visually rich style, approached the film in an unusual way for the thriller genre. Instead of quick cuts and aggressive pacing, Killing Me Softly takes a more restrained approach. The film lets scenes breathe, holding on to moments of silence, of stillness, in ways that make the tension feel more organic. There is an unspoken unease in these pauses, a sense that something is being left unsaid, that something lurks just outside of the frame. One of the most striking cinematographic techniques used in the film is the manipulation of camera distance and framing. In the beginning, Alice's world feels open, expansive. The camera captures her in wide shots, moving freely through the streets of London, surrounded by people, by noise, by life. But as she becomes more entangled with Adam, the framing starts to change. The camera moves in closer, trapping her within the shot, creating a sense of claustrophobia even when she is in large spaces. The world that once felt limitless starts to feel smaller, more suffocating. The way lighting is used reinforces this shift. In the early stages of Alice and Adam's relationship, the lighting is warm, intimate, often filled with soft glows and golden hues. It gives the illusion of comfort, of something safe and desirable. But as the story progresses, those warm tones are slowly drained away. Shadows creep in. Scenes that once felt inviting now feel ominous, even when nothing explicitly dangerous is happening. The most unsettling aspect is that the change happens so gradually that the audience doesn't notice it at first, just as Alice doesn't fully realize how her world is shifting until she is too deep inside it. Another brilliant use of cinematography comes in the form of mirrors and reflections, which appear throughout the film as symbols of distorted reality. Often, Alice is seen through a reflection rather than directly, emphasizing the idea that her perception of herself is changing, that she is losing her sense of who she truly is. The way lighting is used reinforces this shift. In the early stages of Alice and Adam's relationship, the lighting is warm, intimate, often filled with soft glows and golden hues. It gives the illusion of comfort, of something safe and desirable. But as the story progresses, those warm tones are slowly drained away. Shadows creep in. Scenes that once felt inviting now feel ominous, even when nothing explicitly dangerous is happening. The most unsettling aspect is that the change happens so gradually that the audience doesn't notice it at first, just as Alice doesn't fully realize how her world is shifting until she is too deep inside it. Another brilliant use of cinematography comes in the form of mirrors and reflections, which appear throughout the film as symbols of distorted reality. Often, Alice is seen through a reflection rather than directly, emphasizing the idea that her perception of herself is changing, that she is losing her sense of who she truly is. There are moments where Adam is only visible through a mirror, reinforcing the idea that she is not seeing him as he truly is, only as the version he presents to her. These subtle visual choices add layers to the film's psychological depth, making the audience question what is real and what is merely an illusion. Sound design plays a crucial role in shaping the film's atmosphere. Unlike traditional thrillers that use loud, dramatic scores to heighten tension, Killing Me Softly relies on the power of silence and isolated sounds. The moments of quiet are what make the film feel so unnerving. When Alice begins to suspect Adam, the world around her seems to go quiet. The background noise fades, emphasizing only the sound of her own breathing, the rustle of fabric, the creak of a floorboard. The absence of sound in these moments forces the audience to lean in, to listen, to feel the weight of her fear. In contrast, when Alice is swept up in passion, the sound design changes completely. Her heartbeat is amplified, the rustling of sheets, the soft murmurs of Adam's voice, everything is heightened, creating an almost dreamlike quality. This contrast between the sensual and the sinister is what makes the film so effective. The very things that once made Alice feel safe, Adam's voice, his touch, his presence, become the things that make her feel trapped. The film also uses diegetic sound, sound that exists within the world of the film itself, to build tension. One of the most effective examples is when Alice begins to suspect that someone is watching her. Instead of using an eerie musical cue to signal danger, the film lets the environment do the work. A door creaks slightly ajar. The faint sound of footsteps echoes in the distance. A phone rings, but when she answers, there is only silence. These sounds, so ordinary in isolation, become unsettling in the context of the story. They suggest that something is off, that something is happening just beyond Alice's reach. Editing also plays a major role in the film's psychological intensity. Killing Me Softly does not use fast cuts or rapid pacing. Instead, it leans into slow, deliberate editing, allowing tension to build naturally. Many scenes unfold in long, unbroken takes, forcing the audience to sit in the discomfort of the moment. This technique is particularly effective in scenes where Alice is beginning to question Adam. The camera lingers on her face as she processes new information, capturing every flicker of doubt, every hesitation. It makes the audience feel as though they are trapped inside her mind, experiencing her paranoia firsthand. One particularly brilliant editing choice comes in the scene where Alice discovers the letters from Adam's past lovers. Instead of immediately cutting to a reaction shot, the film lingers on the letters themselves, letting the audience absorb the weight of what she is seeing before showing her response. The sequence unfolds almost in real time, making the moment feel raw, unfiltered. Despite the film's meticulous craftsmanship, its box office performance was not what the studio had hoped for. Released in 2002, Killing Me Softly struggled to find its audience. The marketing campaign leaned heavily on its erotic thriller elements, which led to confusion about what kind of film it actually was. Some audiences expected a straightforward romance with mystery elements, while others anticipated a darker psychological thriller. The film was caught in between, and as a result, it failed to perform strongly at the box office with a budget of $25 million. Killing Me Softly grossed only a small fraction of that in theaters, leading to an early shift to DVD and international distribution. In some markets, the film was released straight to video, which significantly affected its visibility. Critics were divided. Some praised its cinematic style and tension, while others felt it lacked the narrative punch of other psychological thrillers from the same era. However, over time, the film found a second life. As streaming and digital rentals became more popular, Killing Me Softly gained a cult following, particularly among fans of slow-burn psychological thrillers. Viewers began to appreciate its atmospheric storytelling, its subtle horror, and its exploration of manipulation and power dynamics in relationships. Many have since argued that Killing Me Softly was ahead of its time, a film that might have performed better in today's market, where audiences have grown more accustomed to films that blur the line between genres. The themes of coercion, control, and psychological entrapment resonate more strongly in the modern era, making the film feel strangely relevant years after its release. Ultimately, Killing Me Softly stands as a film that refused to play by traditional thriller rules. It is a movie built on slowly creeping dread rather than immediate shock, on subtle manipulations rather than overt horror. Its filmmaking techniques, the lighting, the sound, the editing, the framing, work together to create an experience that lingers, one that pulls the viewer into Alice's world and refuses to let go. And that is what makes it so unforgettable. It is not a film that shouts, it whispers, making you lean in closer, drawing you deeper into its web until you realize that, just like Alice, you have been trapped all along. The story of Killing Me Softly was intense, psychological, and deeply unsettling, but what made it truly come to life was the cast. Actors who brought a raw, hypnotic energy to the screen, making every moment feel charged with passion, paranoia, and a growing sense of unease. Behind the scenes, their experiences with the film were just as fascinating as the story itself, filled with unexpected challenges, creative risks, and even moments of real emotional impact. And when the film finally reached audiences, the response was as divided as the story it told. Some were captivated by its slow-burning tension, while others found themselves struggling to categorize it, unsure whether they were watching a romance, a thriller, or something altogether different. At the heart of the film was Heather Graham, who took on the role of Alice, a woman who begins as confident and independent but finds herself spiraling into a love that quickly becomes suffocating. Graham was already known for her performances in films like Boogie Nights and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, where she played characters with a mix of charm and sensuality. But Killing Me Softly was something different. It required her to explore vulnerability, fear, and self-doubt in a way that she hadn't before. At the heart of the film was Heather Graham, who took on the role of Alice, a woman who begins as confident and independent but finds herself spiraling into a love that quickly becomes suffocating. Graham was already known for her performances in films like Boogie Nights and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, where she played characters with a mix of charm and sensuality. But Killing Me Softly was something different. It required her to explore vulnerability, fear, and self-doubt in a way that she hadn't before. Graham later described the role as one of the most emotionally draining she had ever played. Alice is someone who thinks she knows what she wants, but she's caught in something so much bigger than her, she said in an interview. Playing her meant allowing myself to step into that space of confusion and doubt, where love and fear start to look like the same thing. She spoke about how certain scenes left her feeling truly shaken, particularly the moments where Alice begins to realize that the man she loves may not be who he claims to be. There's a scene where Alice finds evidence that Adam has been lying to her, and I remember feeling physically cold after shooting it, she recalled. It was like my body reacted before my mind did. Opposite her was Joseph Fiennes, playing the enigmatic and dangerously alluring Adam Tallis. Fiennes, best known for Shakespeare in Love and Elizabeth, was not the obvious choice for a role like Adam, a man who needed to be both intoxicatingly desirable and quietly terrifying. But it was exactly that unexpected casting that made him so effective. Fiennes had built a career on playing deeply emotional, poetic characters, and his version of Adam was not an overt villain, but something much more insidious, a man who seemed perfect until he didn't. Fiennes took a methodical approach to the role, carefully balancing Adam's charm with an undercurrent of unpredictability. He avoided portraying him as a straightforward antagonist, instead allowing small cracks in his character to appear gradually. The key to playing Adam was making sure that the audience believed in him as much as Alice did, at least at first, Fiennes explained. If he's too obviously dangerous, the story doesn't work. He had to feel like a dream before he became a nightmare. Interestingly, Fiennes kept his distance from the cast and crew during filming, maintaining a sense of mystery even off-camera. Heather Graham later admitted that she was never quite sure what to expect from him. Joseph had this way of being incredibly charming one moment and then totally unreadable the next, she said. It wasn't a performance, it was just how he carried himself during filming. I think it helped, in a way. It made the tension between our characters feel even more real. Director Chen Kaige, best known for his work on Farewell, My Concubine, took a highly stylized approach to the film, focusing on the psychological depth of the characters rather than relying on conventional thriller techniques. His directing style was patient, deliberate, often allowing scenes to unfold in long takes, forcing the actors to sit in moments of tension. Kaige wanted the audience to feel trapped inside Alice's experience, just as she was trapped inside Adam's world. One of the biggest challenges on set was filming the intimate scenes. Unlike traditional love stories, where passion is portrayed as something beautiful and safe, Killing Me Softly required something different. The love scenes had to feel both exhilarating and unsettling, reflecting the shifting dynamic between Alice and Adam. Graham and Fiennes worked closely with movement coaches to make sure their interactions felt raw and spontaneous, rather than overly choreographed. There was this balance we had to find, Graham recalled. We needed to show how intoxicating their connection was, but also plant the seeds of unease. It couldn't just be romantic, it had to feel like something bigger, something a little dangerous. Fiennes added, the key was making the audience feel drawn in and repelled at the same time. That's how manipulation works, it's seductive before it's terrifying. When Killing Me Softly was released, it faced a mixed reception from audiences and critics alike. Some praised its psychological depth, its use of subtle horror, and its willingness to explore the fine line between passion and possession. Others found its pacing too slow, its ambiguity frustrating, or its blend of genres confusing. Critics were particularly divided on the film's tone. Some believed it was a bold and atmospheric thriller, while others felt it struggled to define itself. One critic wrote, "Killing Me Softly is a film that wants to be a love story and a nightmare at the same time. For some, that will be its greatest strength. For others, it will be its downfall." Audiences, too, were split. Some viewers found themselves mesmerized by the slow-burn intensity, appreciating the film's psychological unraveling rather than expecting conventional thrills. Others, expecting a more traditional erotic thriller, were left confused by its quiet, creeping dread. Over time, however, Killing Me Softly developed a cult following, particularly among fans of psychological horror and domestic thrillers. One of the most surprising aspects of the film's legacy is how it has been re-evaluated in recent years. As discussions around coercive relationships, psychological abuse, and manipulation have become more prevalent, many have revisited Killing Me Softly with a new perspective. Some viewers now see it as a film that was ahead of its time, exploring themes that weren't widely discussed when it was first released. "I think the film resonates differently now," Graham said in a later interview. "At the time, people were expecting something more straightforward. But now, with everything we understand about relationships and power dynamics, I think it hits in a different way." Fiennes, too, reflected on how the film's themes have aged. Adam isn't just a man who hides secrets, he's someone who understands control. He knows exactly how to make Alice believe in him, how to make her doubt herself. That's what makes him so unsettling. And I think people recognize that now more than they did when the film first came out. Looking at audience reviews over the years, there is a clear divide between those who love the film and those who don't. On one side are those who appreciate its moody atmosphere, psychological depth, and slow-burning dread. On the other are those who feel it lacks the sharp impact of other thrillers from the era. Some reviews highlight the film's unique cinematography and eerie use of silence, while others criticize its pacing, arguing that it takes too long to reach its conclusion. But perhaps the most telling response is that people still talk about the film, still debate its meaning and its effectiveness. Whether loved or misunderstood, Killing Me Softly is not a film that disappears easily. It lingers, just like Adam's presence in Alice's mind, just like the echoes of a love story that was never really love at all. And in the end, isn't that the mark of a truly powerful film? Not whether everyone agrees on its quality, but whether it leaves a mark, refuses to be forgotten. Because love, when it's real, should never feel like a trap. And when it does, it's already too late. Some films leave an impression that fades over time, while others linger, settling in the mind like an unresolved thought, a question that refuses to be answered. Killing Me Softly, 2002, is one of those films. And in the end, isn't that the mark of a truly powerful film? Not whether everyone agrees on its quality, but whether it leaves a mark, refuses to be forgotten. Because love, when it's real, should never feel like a trap. And when it does, it's already too late. Some films leave an impression that fades over time, while others linger, settling in the mind like an unresolved thought, a question that refuses to be answered. Killing Me Softly, 2002, is one of those films. It is not just a story about passion or paranoia. It is a study of obsession, of how easily love and control can become indistinguishable, of the terrifying realization that the person you trust the most may also be the one you should fear. Whether you were drawn in by its slow-burning tension, its psychological depth, or its eerie sense of inevitability, one thing is certain. It is a film that does not let go. Looking back, we have explored every layer of this enigmatic thriller, from its intense and deeply committed cast performances to the cinematic techniques that shaped its haunting atmosphere. We examined how Heather Graham's portrayal of Alice took audiences on a journey from euphoria to entrapment, and how Joseph Fiennes' performance as Adam created a character both seductive and sinister, a man who could make anyone believe in him, until the moment they realized they shouldn't. Their chemistry was more than just physical. It was a power struggle, a dance of manipulation that played out with devastating consequences. We also dove into the production of the film, uncovering the behind-the-scenes choices that made it such a unique entry in the thriller genre. From Chen Kaige's deliberate poetic direction to the careful balance between psychological horror and erotic tension, every element of the film was designed to make the audience feel what Alice feels. Drawn in, uncertain, increasingly trapped in a world that looks beautiful but feels wrong. The cinematography played a crucial role, using mirrors, tight framing, and shifting lighting to reflect Alice's gradual realization that her life is not what she thought it was. Even the sound design worked subtly to unsettle, letting silence and distant echoes replace traditional suspense music, forcing the viewer to listen, to lean in, to feel the weight of every moment. And yet, Killing Me Softly was not a film that fit neatly into a single category. It was not just a romance, though its passion was undeniable. It was not just a thriller, though its suspense was masterfully crafted. And it was not just a psychological drama, though it dug deep into themes of identity, control, and self-deception. This refusal to be easily defined became both its greatest strength and its greatest challenge. At the box office, the film struggled, caught between expectations and reality. Audiences who expected a straightforward erotic thriller were instead given a slow-burning psychological experience. Critics were divided. Some praised its atmosphere and tension, while others found its pacing too methodical. And yet, in the years since its release, the film has found a second life. More and more viewers have returned to it, drawn to its unsettling themes and its eerie relevance in modern discussions about manipulation, toxic relationships, and the illusion of love. One of the most compelling aspects of the film's symbolism was how it used mirrors, confined spaces, and shifting cinematography to represent Alice's transformation. At first, she was free, confident, open, framed in wide shots that made the world feel vast. But as her relationship with Adam deepened, her world grew smaller, her reflections more distorted, her sense of reality more fragile. By the time she discovers the truth, the audience has already been drawn into that same suffocating space with her. And that is what makes Killing Me Softly so memorable. It does not simply tell a story, it makes you experience it. It does not just show you Alice's journey, it pulls you into her mind, making you question what is real, what is safe, what love is supposed to feel like. And when the credits roll, it leaves you with that lingering doubt, that haunting feeling that sometimes the most beautiful things in the world are the most dangerous. The impact of the film is undeniable. Over the years, it has become a cult thriller, one that people return to with new perspectives, seeing things they may have missed the first time. Some recognize it as a cautionary tale about coercion and control, a film that was ahead of its time in portraying how easily someone can lose themselves in a relationship that feels all-consuming. Others appreciate it for its slow, psychological tension, its ability to create fear not through violence, but through something more insidious, the feeling of being watched, of being owned, of realizing too late that you have given your trust to the wrong person. So, the final question remains. Is Killing Me Softly a love story or a horror story? Perhaps it is both. Because love, in its purest form, should make you feel safe. It should lift you up, not pull you under. It should be built on trust, not control. But in Alice's case, and in so many real-life stories, love and possession can look dangerously similar, until it is too late to escape. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into Killing Me Softly, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, it really helps out the channel. And if you love dissecting movies, uncovering hidden meanings, and exploring the art of cinema, subscribe for more in-depth movie analyses. We cover everything from psychological thrillers to mind-bending dramas, bringing you the most fascinating stories behind the films you love. And now, I want to hear from you. What did you think of Killing Me Softly? Was it a misunderstood thriller, or did it fail to reach its potential? Did you see Adam as a villain from the start, or did the film make you question his true nature? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, trust your instincts, question what feels too perfect, and never let love blind you to the truth.